Hey, Fanboy Nation.
This is your pal Daffy Duck, and you're watching.
We're watching Fanboy.
A fanboy, etc.
Fanboy Nation.
Dot, I assume Tom.
This man and I have been friends for a while through his work in public relations. Now you'll see his work, or read his work rather, as an author and see his plays. Today we are talking about A Mound Over Hell trilogy with the third book being released. Gary Morgenstein, how are you today?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Hello to everyone. Happy Friday.
Yeah, you're looking well. You're getting some sun in that New York rain and snow, so I'm impressed.
Well, I'm kind of like a little vampiric because I hate the sun. I like cold weather, so I know. I mean, you and I go back and forth. You'll say it's a beautiful day. It's 85 degrees, and I'll say, fair. It's going to be like 65 here, which is for me not November weather.
Hey. It's a frosty 72 right now.
Oh no, you got to wear a jacket. You poor baby. Oh no.
I might have to put on socks this evening. All right. So
it'll just make the bourbon taste better.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, really. Let's remember.
Yeah. Well, the beautiful thing is your trilogy series, beginning with A Mound Over Hell, you've just released your third book in the installment. Take us through the two other books, and let us know the general premise of this series.
Well, A Mound Over Hell, followed by A Fastball for Freedom and A Dugout to Peace, which is available for pre-order, which comes out officially December 5th, begins in 2098. It's a dystopian political baseball trilogy. Begins in 2098 after America and the West have lost World War III to the Islamic Empire. Not too timely. Democracy is dead. America is surrounded, and it's run by a nanny state called the family, led by grandma, where such things as patriotism is outlawed, religion is outlawed, although the upside is that social media is banned under the anti-narcissism laws. So, there are some good things to look forward to. And in the backdrop is baseball. Baseball is discredited and associated with the old America, the great America, the failed democracy, which many feel brought us to this disaster of losing a world war. And baseball begins its final season down to two teams in crumbling Amazon Stadium, the stadium formerly known as Yankee Stadium. And something unexplained and slightly miraculous happens because the main character, Puppy Nedick, who's a baseball historian, talk about having a job that doesn't have a great future, is chronicling the final season of baseball. And he celebrated his birthday, speaking of bourbon, and he wakes up the next morning kind of hungover, and there on the floor is this old guy, kind of smelly, and Puppy has no idea how he got into his apartment, and the guy insists his name is Mickey Mantle. Puppy says, "It's really just what I need. Thank you very much." And then a few days later comes a courtly Southern gentleman who says his name is Ty Cobb. And then a little after that comes a great player from the past, a woman, Mushi Lopez, who's kind of like the Shohei Ohtani of the late 21st century. And baseball becomes revitalized and becomes a pawn in the struggle between America and Islam. And this very hot Cold War that remains, where people on both sides, grandma and the son of the Grand Mufti, Abdullah, they want to find a peace. They want a genuine peace once and for all, for people to find a way to live together. But there are sides who want World War IV. So if I could just, one moment more, artists for thousands of years have held a mirror up to society. And we say, this is what's wrong. And that's our role. We look at things differently because we are different, because that's why we become artists, because we make believe, because we're a little dysfunctional in our ways for whatever individual reasons we have. It's no longer acceptable for artists to simply hold up a mirror and say, this is wrong. We have enough finger pointing. We could get that anywhere. through entertainment, yes, you show there's something wrong with the world, but you must light a light. You must show that there is a way forward. And this world that I've created, there's a lot of hate. It's ugly. I don't pull punches. There's some very harrowing scenes, but ordinary people who become heroes, very much against their will, because like everyone, they just want to be left alone, have a job, find love, be happy. But they get thrust into essentially what becomes life and death experiences, and it's adventure, and there's a lot of adventure and romance involved, because they want to find a way forward and to show that even amidst the hate, there's hope. And in my trilogy, the hope is fueled by faith. I'm not talking about God. I'm talking about faith in ourselves and each other, and a baseball well thrown.
There's something about you Yankee fans that you always have to bring up Mickey Mantle, and everything has to be baseball related and baseball metaphor.
Yes, that's right. I agree with you. Well, baseball is sentimental, and we live in a society now which is no longer sentimental. And that's why baseball is no longer the national pastime. And I think when you write a dystopian novel, I think the easiest thing to fall right into the rabbit hole with is when you try to be predictive, when you try to reference names from today. There's no mention of Donald Trump or Joe Biden in the novel. There's mentions of, Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge just as players for the past. But you must create your own world, and that's imperative. And you must have rules reflecting that world, not this world. So it's easy enough nowadays for people to see how the American military, gutted by wokeness, by the lack of standards, having difficulty meeting recruitment, would lose a world war. Because I wanted to do something, a gut punch to America. I didn't want some, environmental disaster that's been done before. I wanted America to lose a war, to have it all fall apart once and for all. And I could have had them fight Russia, but that's, come on, Red Dawn, that's all been done. China might be more likely, if you want to predict, but boring. But Islam is a 1,300-year war. The very first foreign war America ever fought was in the Jefferson administration against the Barbary pirates, the halls of Montezuma and all that. So I wanted to have that third rail. But so you want the reader to see how something could happen, so they don't go, oh, really? Come on. But we could see how democracy dies. We could see how religion is outlawed. There's a lot of things that we see, but it must be within the realm of that world. For example, I said social media is banned, which I think should happen probably in 2025. I mean, I'm all for I think it's carcinogenic, toxic, whatever horrible word you want to mention it is. But it's this world of the family is built on relationships, on love. It's post-identity. It doesn't matter, gay, straight, whatever. There's no mention of race or background, nothing, unless you happen to be Muslim, because all the Muslims were deported as the war neared. So that there's that. But other than that, there's the sort of prejudice we know of, you're accepting. But you must have real relationships. You must have real romances. You must have real friendships. And I don't want to shock everyone out there, but the 1,000 friends you have on Facebook are really not your friends. And all the nonsense of influences in this world, you have to think for yourself. There's no critics, for example. There's no, Mr. Samo of FanboyNation writing a review. That's not tolerated. So so within that world, you create laws that reflect that world. One of the characters, for example, gets pregnant. She's a single mother. So I thought, oh, well, what am I going to do in this world? Now, abortion in this world is illegal. It's not because, there's some far right clique that says, conception begins at birth. No, it's a very simple reason. In World War III, America lost 17 million people, including 4 million children. It's a bottom line. We must rebreed. We must restock. But then what do you do? As a writer, what does the character do? She must go and find an illicit abortion. So, it's single motherhood, being a single parent is outlawed. because it's believed that both parents are necessary to raise a child. So there's things, that you build in to your story, and sometimes it's limiting. Sometimes I would be there, what did you do to yourself? Because there are the three most revered professions are teachers, cops, and doctors. Because if they go south, it's lights out, as we know, right? But the police of this near 22nd century are not like the police of today. They're very, very limited. They're very polite. So I have to find, there's a police investigation along the way. And it was interesting to have them be able to do their work. But so I had to come up with new rules. So I want people to come and know that this is not a conservative, liberal, Democrat. I mean, those things don't matter anymore. There's a mixture of everything. But it's a whole different world.
Now, when you create this world in it unto itself, do you create a character Bible, or do you run through the draft first run and then go back and develop the story even further?
Well, I always envy writers who would do just that. It must make their lives a lot easier. But just what you said, I kind of wing it a lot. I have a general idea where it would end, and I kind of had a general idea when I started it back in May 2015, how it would end. How I got there was a mystery. That was the fun. My wife created what she called a genius board for me for A Mound over Help, and the first book. And so I wrote Post-its. I spent all afternoon putting the Post-its up on this cardboard, fold out, so I could see it. You always see on television the writers, they have everything, the index cards up there and everything. And I was so proud of myself. I mean, hours I spent. I never looked at it again because I just let it flow, because I have to enjoy myself. And I know this sounds trippy. Many writers say it. So it's not just, our mental illness, but characters do take over a story. They really do. I remember reading, hearing Philip K. Dick, one of my literary heroes, talk about that. And it's very true. And you say, well, how is that possible? You created them. Well, I guess. I know. The door to the other side, and you could believe label wherever the other side might be, opens, and in they come. And almost never did I even so much as change a name. I would understand them deeper. We dig deeper. The many, aspects and flaws and quirks would come through. But pretty much as they came into my head, so that's how they rolled out.
When you do something like this, we have to go back, and when people are wondering why the war is with Islam in this story, this book is also 10 years in the making. So we were still very much entrenched in Afghanistan when you began conceptualizing the book and writing the book. This isn't something that is a recent phenomenon, and this isn't something, you being Jewish and them being Muslim, that is what rooted in all this. The time frame that this came about was when the United States was still deeply entrenched in a war in Central Asia.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. And well, first of all, it has nothing to do with Jewish Muslim, as you say. In fact, there are no Jews in the book until the very end. The first nation that got taken out was Israel. The Jews went into hiding through pogroms. So there's nothing. It's occasionally referenced that Judaism is illegal, but this has nothing to do with that at all. In fact, I'm proud that through the first two books, and that's over 1,000 pages, only one person has ever accused me of being Islamophobic, which is pretty remarkable in these days. And that's because I showed tremendous respect for all my characters. I don't demonize people. I'm not saying that, aspects of Sharia are not horrible, because they are. That's also a fact. But what I try to do is show that there's good and bad and a lot of gray. And so I made sure that I used proper names. I read parts of the Quran. I wanted to be very careful so no one could say that, this is a diatribe, because it's not. There's a lot of hate on all sides. And, at the end, it's the son of the Grand Mufti saying, Well, we've never had a real Islamic Reformation. There's, in this book, there's millions and millions of Muslims who want freedom, just as millions of Americans realize, I want democracy back. So it is that there's more that unites us than divides us.
The book itself, we begin with A Mound Over Hell. We're now in the stages of the trilogy being completed. Well, the book is completed, and we're waiting for the December release date. What's it like to separate yourself after nearly a decade and 1,500 plus pages of these characters and multiples upon multiple months, and years, compiling all this and creating this one cohesive story that now that it's done and the book is coming out, where do you go from here? Does this feel like a graduation? Does this feel like a divorce? Or does it feel like a memorial?
Well, that's good. It was very sad to finish it. I don't think I've ever had the sense, wow, I did it. I mean, there's a sense of pride, but all these characters, like you say, I lived with them for nearly a decade. They're my friends. I miss them. When I finally did the last of the edits, it was like, oh no, I'm not going to talk to them anymore. I'm not going to be with them anymore. And I wish them well, and most of them made it through it. There's a few, fatalities along the way, but as that happens, but most of them survive, or altered. They have that story, but there's a sadness to put it down. There really was.
Now, I live here in Southern California, and General Motors made sure that LA, Orange County, and the surrounding areas became a driving town. So, a 35-mile drive, which should only take roughly 30 to 40 minutes, has sometimes turned into 3.5 hours, depending on traffic, or now with the 10 freeway being shut down, So we tend to spend a lot of time in our vehicles, and audiobooks have become huge. Are there plans for the future to turn this trilogy into an audiobook series that we can listen to in the car? Because, it's quite dangerous texting and driving. I can only imagine reading and driving.
Yeah, I mean, there's talks about that, yes. I have no firm details, but there's certainly talks.
The funny thing is, this always reminds me, I remember one morning, I was stuck in traffic. This was several years ago. And this gentleman, and I use the term loosely, was sitting in traffic with a bowl of cereal in one hand and shaving in the other. And I'm just thinking that, his clippings are going into his cereal bowl and he's not realizing this. And I didn't know whether to be impressed that he was able to shave and eat at the same time, or be disgusted that he's not realizing that his facial hair is ending up in his cereal and he's digesting it.
Oh, man. Well, we don't have that in New York. I mean, there are people, of course, commute into New York City, but many of us are just on the subway and buses.
Well, you have enough crazies on your subways and buses too. So at least here, everyone's having their private, their crazy moments in private.
Well, yes, on the subway, if you see someone with a razor, you change the car. So they're not there to shave.
You change the car and you get off on the next stop.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Baseball, and it's funny because I had given up on baseball altogether. And you, for the longest time, had gotten on my case to go to one game. And now here I announce baseball part-time, as the backup announcer for 2 minor league teams. And then I also announce college baseball and softball. So I blame you for that.
Good.
But on top of that, we recently changed the rules in baseball to now where we've added a pitch clock where we can't take 3 minutes to readjust and reassess and argue with the catcher. No, I don't want to throw that. Here's our time limit. We got 25 seconds to throw this pitch. Go. And I appreciate that rule because it sped up the game, even though it reduced beer sales, because now the game's moving way faster, that seventh inning comes a lot sooner. The one thing I didn't like in the rule change is the larger plates. And I think the plates that are now the size of pizza boxes has kind of made it easier, not necessarily for the umpires, but it takes away from the struggle and the hustle of getting on base. What's your take on that and the pitch clock?
Well, I assure everyone that in the 2099 season, all the rules go back to the 20th century. So it's baseball for a purist. In fact, they even get rid of the designated hitter. They see baseball as it should be, because baseball, by that time in the future, the whole concept of bunting has been lost, hit and run, all the subtleties of baseball were banished. And I think pizza box baseball bases is silly. I think not being able to throw over to keep a runner close after a certain point is silly. I mean, it's just too bad. Then go watch football or basketball. Well, you know, that's what baseball is about. It's more. No, I'm not saying it should be 3.5 hours. I don't say that, but I think they went a little too far.
Yeah, I don't mind the pitch clock. I enjoy the pitch clock. I think it speeds up the game and makes the pitcher and catcher more decisive on the field. But it's the bases that bother me a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, the designated hitter thing, I don't have a problem with. You know, you want to make sure that Shohei's healthy on the mound when he's pitching.
Yeah. Yes.
So, you know, when you have things of that sort in baseball, and, you know, you mentioned going back to the rules of the 20th century and then bunting. Bunting originally started in the Negro League. Stealing bases started in the Negro League. These weren't Major League Baseball rules. These were eventually incorporated. How does the future in the Mound Over Hell trilogy able to adjust and pay tribute to what either happened then, or is that not mentioned at all and these just became the standard rules?
They just became the standard rules. There was so much. What the books also look at is how much of our history was rewritten. And so by the start of the 22nd century, there's a question of what really happened. No one really knows what our real history was, because it was changed so often to accommodate special interests. So baseball is baseball, and it's linked to history, and pop culture becomes a way of trying to sort out what really happened. And books which they thought were destroyed are brought back. They were saved. A lot of history was saved ultimately by the Catholic Church and by Muslims who preserved the books. And so at some point in the trilogy, Christianity, Islam, and America compare notes to say, well, what really happened?
Yeah, let's see if that actually happens anytime soon, because history is written by the victor.
Yes,
or the one willing to pay the cheap end of the publication rights.
Yes, well, and I'm not making any predictions.
Yeah. Now, the third book in the series, and I want to make sure I get it right, is A Dugout to Peace.
Yes.
Yeah. How did you come up with these titles, Mound Over Hell, and so on?
I don't really know. I wish I could give you like some great answer. I don't really know. It just popped into my head. I wanted to have a theme. As you can see, you know, the first one is A Mound Over Hell. It's just the nightmare of what America is going through at that time. And then I just said, okay, I've got to be thematic. So it's, you know, a fastball to the freedom which is building throughout the world in the second book, and peace. They try to finally bring everyone together.
All right, then I do have to ask you this. Since the book is entertainment and it is a dystopian fiction book with a light at the end of the tunnel, which unfortunately most dystopian stories do not have anymore.
Yes.
But, you know, 1984 and A Brave New World didn't either. What is the greatest baseball movie ever made?
Oh. I don't know. What do you tell me what you think first?
I think it's a short list, but Pride of the Yankees has to be on that list.
Yes. Yes.
The Natural has to be on that list. You know, everyone loves Field of Dreams, but that's because it's the son that finally got to reconcile with his dad. I think that's the real big thing in that one.
I would put that number one for me, yeah.
And then The Sandlot, because it's the youthful joy of baseball in and of itself. So that would be my short list of baseball movies. And then, of course, The Bad News Bears, because that's just a redemptive story.
Also, Angels in the Outfield, from the original from the 1950s, is a beautiful movie. Mm-hmm. I really love that movie. That's like one of the, For Love of the Game, The Scout. Wasn't that what with the Clint Eastwood movie?
I think so. Yes.
Yes, I really like that movie too. I'm a big Clint Eastwood fan. Most of his work, anyway. And baseball, but baseball, you don't see as many baseball movies now. If you think about it.
Yeah, well, it is the times, but we don't see very many football movies anymore either. I mean,
No.
I think the last one was what, The Blind Side?
Yeah, and look, that was the truth about that, right?
Ugh, that's a heavy truth, but I'm glad the truth is coming out, and I think the
Yeah.
documentary about what really happened is coming out. So
Yes,
it's
yes.
going to be some very interesting times. I don't think Sandra Bullock should have gotten the backlash that she got for portraying the lady, and they're like, "Give your Oscar back." I thought that was ridiculous.
Well,
That's an overcorrection.
nowadays. Yeah, I mean, why is it her fault? Well, but nowadays everything is overcorrection. Everything is overreaction. I mean, most things. Yeah.
Well, my friend, I am thrilled for you with this trilogy. Yes, it is 1,500 plus pages, but the story is brought to the attention of the general populace. Baseball is used as the backdrop, as the great unifier in this instance. And the reason why I'm chuckling is because for some reason it popped into my head about George Bush Jr. saying that he was the great decider, and that has no relation to this whatsoever. So forgive me for the chuckling. It's just a weird crossover in my head. But remind us of the release date for the third installment, and where can we find all three books?
Well, all three books are really wherever you want to get them. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google. You can go to a bookstore and they'll order it for you. Bookshop.org is really good at that, supports independent booksellers. A Dugout to Pieces available for pre-order. Official pub date is December 5th. And you could follow me at Writer Gary on Twitter and on Facebook and Instagram.
Beautiful. And before I let you go, are there going to be any book signings coming up?
There will be one in Brooklyn at a friend's store. Actually a friend's takeout store. Brancaccios in December. So that's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be here in Windsor Terrace. We don't have the date yet because he keeps telling me, just let me live through Thanksgiving. Let me get through Thanksgiving. I say, all right, fine, calm down.
Leave it to you to incorporate baseball and food in the same setting.
You got it. Pleasure is pleasure, right?
I love it. Thank you so much for today, Gary. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.